What is up, guys? Back for one more Scythe video this week, and today we'll be discussing the general question that gets asked of what is the most powerful faction board combination. Notably, is it Rusveit Industrial or is it Crimea Patriotic? Currently, Rusveit Industrial is not allowed in online games, and for decent reason, but Crimea Patriotic is currently still allowed. So to examine why how we're going to come up with the answer to this question, we need to think about what each of these boards does particularly well to make it a very, very strong combination. Now with Rusveit Industrial, this is the one that most players who play online are probably less familiar with because they don't get to play with it, whereas they do get to play with Patriotic Crimea. Really what you're going to do is you're going to produce 3 times in a row and deploy a mech. Probably you deploy your speed mech, then you distribute onto oil and steel and pick up your encounter with the move action as your 4th action. And then you get a ton of oil and a ton of steel, and you deploy a mech along with that produce, and then you have a lot of different options for what to do from there. This does have the potential for the best start in the game, including everything Crimea Patriotic can do. If you get your second mech and it's a township mech, you deploy where your other mech isn't, and then you go straight to the factory with your character. And if the factory cards contain the option that allows you to produce on 2 different tiles, I believe the cost is like a combat card or something like that, you have made the best start in the game, no doubt, because you can then produce with 8 workers without having to pay reputation and pay a ton of shit to just do that. So that's the best start in the game, is Rusveit Industrial, Township Rush. There's a chance you get that card and you're just set up, basically. You're going to be able to power out your mechs at a very quick pace, get onto your food, get all your enlists ridiculously quickly, and you'll be set. So that's Rusveit Industrial. It's the strongest 8-worker board. It's definitely the easiest to figure out. Now let's talk about Crimea Patriotic. Now what does Crimea Patriotic do? Well, they'll have an enlist by turn 2, because Crimea Patriotic, if you haven't seen my build video, you trade for 2 food turn 1, and then turn 2 you produce an enlist, so you have your first enlist on turn 2, gets you access to your combat cards as well as combat cards for enlisting, which means basically every action you have from there is upgraded. Patriotic board has produce attached to their enlist, which is huge. Since you can't produce again, you only trade for 1 food, 1 steel, and then you produce again. With that production, you spend the 2 food plus 1 of your combat cards to get your second enlist by turn 4, and then the 3rd turn, your trade is attached to your deploy, so you can trade for steel. And I think it's 2 steel, but I think it might even be, it is 2 steel. You trade for 2 steel, you deploy your first mech, you have your 5 workers, you have 2 enlists, 5 workers, your first speed mech, and you're ready to enter the mid-game by turn 5, I believe it is, maybe turn 4? It's turn 5, because then you use your speed mech to deploy your workers and pick up your encounter. Now, is this stronger than what Rusveit Industrial does? My answer, yes. Having your first enlist out by turn 2 is Crimea, having your second enlist out by turn 4, and getting all 4 of your enlists before round 9 every game, probably by round 8 every game, is too powerful. You're going to get all your mechs out really quickly, and you're going to get all your enlists out faster than any other board combination. And it doesn't rely on certain factory cards showing up, it doesn't rely on anything, you just get it consistently. So, is that better than Rusveit Industrial? My answer, yes. Enlists are definitely the best bottom row action, as anybody who's seen a few of my videos will know. You get all these bonuses, plus getting enlists that early means that you're going to translate to even more bonuses from combat power coins. Oftentimes people are going to be getting their upgrades early, so you can get your first enlist for combat cards and picking up 2 combat cards on turn 2. Then on turn 4 you can get your enlist for upgrades before everybody's getting their upgrades online. They might have 1, but they're generally going to get 1 to 2 more. You might get 1 or 2. So that's going to translate to a ton of combat power, to the point where you won't ever really need upgrades besides maybe a move upgrade. So you wouldn't really get more than one upgrade for the board because you don't need it, because you get your enlist off early enough. Your third upgrade, or your third enlist can be this one. You can alternate between these two depending on what your neighbors are doing. But the fact that you get your 4 enlists out by turn 8, round 8, is just too broken. You're going to pick up so many benefits for that. And the fact, again, that doesn't rely on factory cards means that the start is consistent, it's powerful, and it's more powerful than Rusveit Industrial in 90% of games. There is an argument that even with Rusveit Industrial getting that double produce card, that they are even still weaker than Crimea Patriotic. Just because your first mech you're only on oil and steel. I mean, you can go 8 workers, and then your first mech would be your Riverwalk mech, and you move 7 workers onto the farm, as well as your character onto the farm. But then you only have 1 person on steel, and that's a big problem for Rusveit Industrial because they need to be producing mechs with their produce action, and you can't do that with only 1 person on steel. So they really need to get their speed mech first, and that means they're limited on their enlist timings. It's a lot slower, so that's a pretty significant weakness that Crimea Patriotic just doesn't have. So overall, I think Crimea Patriotic is the best faction board combination in the game. It shouldn't be allowed, and it definitely shouldn't be allowed if Rusveit Industrial is not allowed. Rusveit Industrial having very real weaknesses, and Crimea Patriotic just having no weaknesses at all whatsoever. If you were in a game with Crimea Patriotic, it feels really bad because you know if they play correctly, you're all fighting for second place. So yeah, that's it. I hope you guys learned something, maybe enjoyed the video discussing the top faction board combinations. Have a wonderful day.